Hey, looks like had a little sneak appearance by Charlie over there. Andy, how you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thanks. How are you doing, Patrick? Happy to be here.
Good. Looks like some parts of my background are showcasing through. Well, look, I guess we both got the black memo. Welcome to the what are we? Untitled Themed Entertainment Design Show. I'm
That's what you
Patrick
call it.
Kling. That is what we call it. I had to think about that. And Andy Garfield. Andy, big week. Big week for us. Big week for America. Here we have Phil Bloom waiting in the green room. It's actually just his office at his office, but really excited. But of course, the news. What do we got?
Well, just released, I guess, today. Sadly, beloved Disney Imagineer and artist and all-around cool guy, Riley Crump has passed away at age 93. So our hearts go out to Chris and the whole family. And what an incredible life and career he had. I don't know if you have any of his books or anything like that, but just an incredible artist in person.
Yeah, well, yeah, hearts go out to them. But yeah, what an amazing contribution to the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And well, the Oscars. I mean, from a theme entertainment perspective, I mean, the Oscars are quite a spectacle. Andy, what say you? I mean, I know you're into them. Did you have your Oscar watching party?
I did. I didn't have it here at the studio. I was just at a friend's house. I just got to sit back and enjoy it this time instead of making drinks and refreshing food and all that kind of stuff that I usually do. It was actually kind of nice. But I thought it was a great show. I just thought it was just fantastic. Shout out to my buddy John Zucker, who was the art director of the show, and it was fun to text him knowing he was texting me back from the Oscars. That was a fun thing, and that the show was really great, really well written, and they engineered a lot of really great moments, like having Harrison Ford present Best Picture, hoping that Everything Everywhere All at Once would win, and they'd get that moment that they did get with him and Ki Kwan, and that was just fantastic. And I was surprisingly emotional with the first awards of the Best Supporting Actors. It was just very emotional to kick off for that show. It was great, loved it. No notes.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun to see. It was interesting because there's a lot of discussion about when to play people off, when to not play people, and there were only a couple of moments where they did it, and it was it looked like someone was done talking, then another person. It's kind of you kind of need to have kind of got to be brief. You know what I mean? I don't mind it when it's somebody saying in a passionate story and it's engaging, but when it's they're rattling off 20 names, I know it's really cool, but it's well, you don't have much time for that. You know what I mean? So
yeah, we got 2020. 2020 is going to be on.
2020 coming on. We had the South by Southwest, South by as it's called. They had Josh Tomorrow out there doing the flipping robot and the lightsaber. Well, the lightsaber's been revealed, but they were playing some of those toys. Interesting to see that Disney's out at South by Southwest. Chris Grapp, friend of the show, friend of mine, was just saying how I should come out there and check it out because there's a lot of immersive, experiential things that are being discussed and all that. So South by Southwest happened. Anything? I mean, I feel like there's always some sort of news out there in the world that's being announced. Anything else big?
Gosh, I didn't even think to look. I was so wrapped up in the Raleigh news. But I don't think there's anything earth shattering since the last 3 weeks since we did a show.
Yeah, pretty brief period. Okay, cool. Well, with that, why don't we go ahead and bring on the one and only Phil Bloom. We're about to be on. Hello.
There he is.
Hello, guys. Hello, everybody.
Welcome
Thank
to
you
your
so much for
you.
Thank you so much for coming on the show and taking the time. We're very excited to have you.
No problem. Should be fun.
Yeah, well, we're going to make it fun. Well, we're going to be very conversational during this. We have, 10 questions for you, but we won't hold it to you. And of course, for anybody watching in the audience, if you have any questions, feel free to comment with those and we'll get going. Well, first off, would just love to hear yourselves. Introduce yourself a little bit about yourself so people can wrap their heads around you, those of you who may not know what you're all about.
Hi, everybody. Obviously I'm Phil Bloom. I've had a pretty long career in themed entertainment, mostly theme parks, but anything guest experience, certainly anything that's in a theme park, rides and restaurants and shops and playgrounds and theaters and everything else in between. And then other stuff that's guest experience related, museums and stuff like that. I got started. I studied architecture when I was in school, and I also studied theater with the idea that I would maybe be an architect and then do theater stuff as more of a vocation. And it sort of flipped itself around, and a lot of it was I was working as a young guy. I was working as an architect. I was helping friends of mine put on theater shows, 99-seat houses and stuff like that. And one thing I got into movie set design. I got a chance to do some movie set design, and that was interesting because that was professional stuff, working wise. And then somebody suggested I look at Imagineering, and I'm going, what's that? And okay, so Imagineering, it's like a combination theater, architecture. It's like the set designs, but they're permanent. So that's sort of how I worked my way into this field.
Oh, that's great. Well, I love that. It's great to bring that experience from other industries. Oh, sorry, Andy, go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to say, it's always interesting to hear people's origin stories in this industry, because this, we talk to so many young people and they're like, how do we get in? How do we break in? It's just like, man, everybody has a different story, and it's always interesting to hear.
Yeah, and we bring in people now. When we bring in young people, we have a lot of people right out of college or right out of school, or even not even having finished school, and we try to get a mix of architecture kids or theater kids or art school kids, and we have landscape architecture, all kinds of different design fields, we try to make sure we get a mix. We don't want all of one group. And typically, if I did a stereotypical thing, the architects seem to draw better and have a better sense of space, but the theater kids have a much more show bones in their body. So you got to teach the theater kids how to draw at the level that we're drawing and express themselves in this collaborative environment. And you got to teach the architecture kids how to put some show bones into their bodies and really think about the show as opposed to just architectural forms and stuff. So it's always, everybody comes from someplace, but you got skills that can be molded together and work in a collaborative environment.
Yeah, like the CalArts stage manager pipeline to themed entertainment.
Yeah, those guys those people that come out of that.
Yeah,
really have a lot of show stuff and a lot of ability, and they're great candidates to get started working for me, in this business. So that's a great place to start.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into this.
So before we do that, Andy, what does American Scenic do? And you're considered the ride guru. Can you give us a little bit of a topic about that, just so that because you kind of skimmed through it a little bit, but how did you become the ride guru? And then Andy will jump into the normal programming.
Well, when you first come into a place like Imagineering, and think back in the day, this is 30-something years ago, 35 or more years ago, and there wasn't a lot of other companies. It was Imagineering. Universal wasn't even a big entity at the time, and I didn't know anything about this business, and I'm just jumped into it, and you just get exposed to so many things and so many different people doing so many different jobs, and it's like all these things coming together, and at the time you just get opportunities to do stuff. Well, I can do that. I can help with that. I can do that. I can help with that. And I've got a good sense of 3D space and moving through 3D space, and a good calculated sense of how to move vehicles through and people through environments. And sort of I just look, there's other stuff I tried. I wasn't that good at, or didn't work out right, but laying out rides and working that way, that's sort of what I got started on as I worked my way up, just getting trained in the business. My role and the role of my company, which is American Scenic Design, is we're not the creative director. We support creative directors. Anybody with a creative vision, our mission is to help you realize that vision. And mostly it's rides or theme park stuff. We have to have an expertise in laying out rides, any type of ride, anywhere. We can just do it really quickly and accurately. And help you get through the early stages of it. So by the time you're committing, you've gone through a lot of stuff. But our role is supporting creative directors. Anybody with a creative vision, we're going to support you and help you get your vision realized.
Well, related to that, then I guess for the first question that we have is like, you know, at the beginning of the design process, how do you go about considering how the narrative will play out in the experience? Like, you know, with like how do you help tell the story through like ride and show engineering from?
Well, I mean, there's, you know, I'd like to start with what. Okay, you get an idea for an attraction. You know, you might have an IP that you want to, hey, we got to make something on Avatar. We got to make something on Transformers, whatever it is. You got an IP maybe. There's other ways to start too. But what do you want the guest to feel on the ride? What do you want them to say or feel when they get off the ride? What kind of experience do you want them to have? And a lot of it will be like, okay, this property. If you want to experience this property in a theme park setting, we want to make sure that we cover these bases. And how's the best to cover that? What's the right machine to cover that? In some cases, we create a new machine or create a hybrid of different machines, put them together. And sometimes we were tasked with, you must use this ride vehicle, and this is the property, and this is the footprint you got to fit it into. And then we go from there. So there's lots of different ways. Maybe the narrative starts off, but mostly it's. I really want to start with, what do I want the guest to feel when they get off?
I think that's a really great starting point too. It's like, you know, I come in at the end of the process with music and sound, and like I come from the same exact perspective, you know, of like what emotions am I giving the audience and guests permission to feel about the experience. So yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at something like Rise of the Resistance, you know, we got trackless vehicles, but it really fits. If we want people to, hey, we want to take people up and put them on a spaceship in that IP. We want to put them on the Death Star or a Star Destroyer or something. Well, you know what? They got droids running around, so let's make a trackless thing, and that sort of slick way that trackless car works through that thing. That sort of trackless car wouldn't work for a different property. Perhaps it didn't need that. That trackless vehicle has a certain feel to it that sort of works. It feels like you're in a droid sliding around on a spaceship with, you know, the big glossy black floors. And so you pick a vehicle based on how you want the people to feel. It's a big part of it.
I think that's the Rise of the Resistance is one of the best uses narratively of the trackless ride vehicle, because usually people just, you know, a lot of projects are just like, well, make it trackless. Why? Well, why not? Because they're cool. But you literally have narrative reasons for that. I love it.
Well, I mean, you know, some people want to do trackless because it was new. You want to switch places with the cars and have fun doing that. You want to save money by not having track switches, which is actually a big deal. But it doesn't mean that it's the right, because of all those little gimmicks, doesn't mean it's the right thing for that property.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you know, speaking of, you know, integrating ride systems with the ride property, you know, how have you approached the integration of a ride system with the story you're looking to tell? Next question for you.
Well, you know, that, like I said, the ride, there's each attraction should have an essence. What are you trying to get out of it? And the ride system has got to be part of that. It all goes together. It all molds together, and obviously it comes together in Rise of Resistance. Something like Forbidden Journey, Harry Potter and Forbidden Journey, we were tasked with, no, you've got to use the KUKA system. You've got to use that robotic arm system. And a lot of that, it's a very limited system in what it does, but it gives you a couple of things that's really neat. And it's a one-of-a-kind system. But that was, you know, so each project's going to have a different criteria of how to pick a vehicle. Sometimes it's like, look, you know what, we've got to do something in a year and a half, and we don't have time for a new system. Let's find whichever's off the shelf that we can actually order in time. And that, I mean, sometimes it gets down to that, and then you've got to make an attraction around that system. And you know what, you can write a story without a ride system in mind, but once you apply a ride system, your story gets thrown out, because you have to write the story as you're laying it out, and you got to lay it out per the parameters of the technical parameters of whatever ride system you pick. How fast does it go? What's the size of the radiuses? How close are the cars? How far apart can they be? Are they variable speed? Are they single speed? All that kind of stuff dictates what kind of story you're going to write.
So I have a question about Forbidden Journey, and if you can't answer, that's okay. When did the idea of having the rotated carousel type latching screens get work? I really didn't describe that very correctly.
Okay, yeah, we have those little mini domes that you stuck yourself into. It's an interesting question because there's other ways to get. Look, that property needs a connection with the characters and the characters that you've seen in the movies. It can't be something else. We could do animatronics, you could do other things, but the characters got to be part of the thing. You can't just fly around in that world without seeing Ron and Hermione and Harry. You have to put them on there. So how do you do it with this system? Well, this system we were given, look, you've got a 4-seat vehicle that does crazy stuff, but they dispatch every 7 seconds. So you have seconds between cars. And if you're going 4 feet a second, you're 28 feet on center between cars. So you're very, very close to each other, and you're close to each other, and you only got 7 seconds, meaning that every place that you're looking, another car is going to look at that same thing 7 seconds later. So we have to tell scenes in chunks of scenes. Like, for instance, the Forbidden Forest that leads from that through the spider to the Whomping Willows, that's one sequence, but it's really like 5 cars in that same scene at one time. They're just seeing pieces of it, and we're trying to hide the other cars from each other, and it leads from the dragon into the forest through all the different scenes, and then you get hit by the willow, then flip back in. So the point was, how do we get the characters in there? And there is other ways. I mean, I would do another Kuka ride one day when we got ribbons of screens that you could isolate vehicles on, but we really wanted to tell chunks of story. And it's not my favorite thing because that ride ends up being sets, movie sets, movie sets, movie sets, movie. It's one or the other, where something like Spider-Man is completely integrated. Sets and movies are all integrated together. And the Forbidden Journey has a different sequence. So it was an answer to how to get the characters in there and get character moments using that ride vehicle.
So 15 years on, with all the new kinds of technology, and maybe there is no new technology, would you accomplish that in a different way today? That's not one of the questions. Sorry, another side question.
I don't know. I mean, I look at it this way. I think if we wanted to tell a Harry Potter story, the Kuka robot arm might not be the best ride system to do it. I think that the property needed something unique. It needed something one of a kind. You couldn't just throw another Spider-Man vehicle out there and do that. It needed something unique. And that's the brilliance of Mark Woodbury, just insisting that we use that system and fight through all. It's a real fight. There's a lot of restrictions to that system, almost impossible to evacuate, almost impossible to keep it going and all that. So it's a tough machine to work with. But I don't know. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't take for granted if I do another Kuka ride, I'd have the mini domes. I'm not a big fan of those things. I don't like the either or version of that kind of thing as a token. On the other hand, it was a solution that I think it's still a popular ride. It's an amazing thing. 15 years later, it's still on people's top 10 lists, and there's nothing else like it. You get in this thing, you get flung around. I mean, that's cool.
Yeah.
I think that, there's other ways to get media in there, but probably not the kind of media that you needed for this property, where you really needed to have one-on-one time with the main characters.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say before we move on that there's been a few times in my life where I just got off that ride and I said, I'm going to hold my head back the entire time, the first time I went on it. And I was pretty disoriented about, wait, we just got into a dome. Like I didn't realize how it was all working out. And then the next 2 rides, I was kind of like looking around, and it's such a spectacle. The 7-second dispatch interval is crazy, just really masterful, impressive work operationally. Because I come from an operations background originally, just over the top impressive how everyone pulled that off, and your team and everyone's team did that. It's incredible.
Yeah, if I don't know, it'd be hard to get evac from that show, but if you watch the show from the catwalk, it's pretty awesome because it's like all these machines, and they're all just kind of robot arms going around through all the scenes and stuff. It's a really interesting thing to watch the machine of the ride from off board. It'd be a very dangerous thing to watch it on board at the ground level or something, because those things they're just big killer machines.
Yeah, that's funny. I always half jokingly say that themed entertainment, you put people in giant machines that can kill you to make them feel emotions. Because these things are like Transformers, the elevator, it's like a meat grinder. It's like if you look at it wrong, it could just chew you up and spit you out.
Yeah, just what's funny, I'll tell you one thing about the Kuka. Some rides like a Ratatouille thing, it's got these sensors on it. If it senses you in the way, it'll slow down and stop before it hits you. It sensors, and if it actually hits you, it has a tape switch that'll shut the thing down and all that. But the robot arms, the Kuka robot arms, they're programmed to if there's something in the way, they got to stay on schedule. They got to stay on their 7-second interval. So if there's something in the way, like if you drop a hat on the ground and it senses it's rolling over this hat, the computer will send more power to that wheel to make sure that wheel doesn't get slowed down. So if you're on the track, which you would never be, but if you were on the track and it wouldn't be like Ratatouille that would stop. It would actually just, there's something, Patrick's in the way. Let's put more power to that wheel to grind over him. I don't want it to slow down this vehicle. It's a totally different machine.
That's amazing. Yeah. I've worked on some really interesting projects like in China where there's just, no life safety issues or concerns at all, where, I've been, standing like, mixing in a scene or whatever, and suddenly, there's a ride vehicle coming and it's not going to stop. You have to like press yourself against the scenery to just get out of the way.
It's obviously a huge deal. When I talk about iterations at the beginning of a ride thing, it's always like, let's lay this ride out knowing it's got to be safe, because honestly, the absolute last thing you want is somebody to get hurt on any ride that you do. Nobody comes to a theme park to get hurt.
Well, it dovetails sort of perfectly into the next question, which is like, what are the design elements and concerns that you use most often to pull a guest most effectively into the story and the narrative?
Well, there's something. There's a term called a point of engagement, and it's like you want to. There's a goal to say, how early in the experience can we engage the guests where they're immersed, now they're in the story. And then sometimes it can't happen, because you can have a pre-show and they get immersed in the pre-show, but then it's like, okay, time out. How many of your party? Get your seatbelts on. How many of your seats? Get into row 3. Okay, now you're back in the show. So you have this sort of, interrupted immersion. And so you've got to be aware of that. If you want to start your story with a pre-show or a pulse or something, you want to make sure that as to the best you can, that everything from then on is in the storyline. And if you look at something like Rise of Resistance, it's the coolest thing, because everything, why you're even showing up. When you show up, you're showing up to be part of the resistance, and it follows all the way through the pre-show, through the introduction with Ray, getting on a ship, getting kidnapped and detained, all that stuff leading up to getting on the vehicle. It's arguably all within the story, and you don't get interrupted anywhere. So it's a big thing when people talk about pre-shows. We got to make sure, okay, if this is your engagements earlier, we've got to roll the loading of the vehicle into the story.
Yeah. One thing I just want to say this, and this is totally random. With right after the Ray pre-show, when you went back outside, that just blew my mind. I was like, why has nobody ever done that before? It's never been done. And it was such a really interesting, cool thing to just kind of make you feel like you're not on an attraction. I'm not sure.
It's one of those things where when we first do it, and this is, John Lorena, the creative director, has these ideas, we're going to do this stuff. And it's like, okay, let's make sure at the very beginning, we let everybody know, we let operations know we're going to do it. We let the project know we're going to do it so that we can keep doing it. And operations says, okay, if you got to do it, you can do it, but you got to be covered. So you know what? You feel like you're outside, but technically you're covered. So when it rains, you're not going to get wet between, the muster room and the ship that you're getting on. So, and then we exit on the outside. We have a big hangar in between it. There's all that stuff. I don't know. I mean, I would say this, that Chris Mays, the art director, and I we would like, oh my God, they're going to let us get this thing. And it's, the thing is that, they can cancel anything at any time. And so like you're on pins and, they're going to let us have it. And it's like, finally we built that hangar bay and we built that exterior unload. And it's like, we're walking around the site, man. It's like, God, I can't believe they let us have this. And it's amazing what they let us have. And, it's their project. We don't, as Disney owns it, but we got to do it. And everybody on that team knows we pulled something off pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I managed to remain very spoiler free, shockingly, for Rise. And I knew about the hangar bay, obviously, but I didn't know about the shuttle turntable and all that stuff. When to the point where like I assumed it was going to be a flush loading thing, so I moved towards the opposite door of the shuttle. And then when the door you came in through opened up and I turned around, I was just like, holy shit, that was an incredible moment. And then you get into the hangar and they rush you through this like $15 million room, and it's like, come on, go.
One little corner for 2 seconds and then you're out. It's like we built that whole thing for that for that
one moment
experience. So it's awesome what they gave us.
Yeah, it's incredible. What an incredible achievement that we could do a whole show with you about that. And maybe we should.
Yeah,
some other time.
For sure. Kind of going from the let's call it best in class experience of Res Resistance. What are other common pitfalls that can pull a guest out of the story? How might these be anticipated during the design process? So it's like you kind of mentioned it right there a little previously about making sure that there's no now go to row 1 and 2 and 3, that kind of stuff. What other pitfalls? Knowing that we're all limited in time and budget and there's VE along the way, but what are some things that you can think of that maybe they're not necessarily a money thing. It's just somebody using their brain very early on in the process to avoid.
Well, here's a thing. You start with scenes that you want. Oh my God, I got to have this scene. I got to have this thing. If you think whatever it is, it's Mario Kart or it's Spider-Man or it's Harry Potter, there's something, oh my God, I gotta have that. That's so integral. It won't be a Mario Kart ride without that, for instance. And maybe there's more than one of those things. Maybe because each person on the team might have their favorite thing, and we've developed these scenes that are within the collection of scenes. And I would say that one of the things that really almost always helps if you get stuck and your ride's just not working, you just can't figure it out, and you're trying to go this way and that way, and there's something really screwed up. One of the things is go and look at the ride and take out your favorite scene. Just take it out, throw it out, and almost always the ride just flows right together after that point. Typically, I describe it this way: sometimes your favorite scene is so convoluted that you spend two scenes setting up the scene and then 2 scenes getting out of it, and then you've screwed up 5 scenes to make this one moment work when you're fighting the whole thing. And sometimes you pull that out, the scenes don't fight each other and they kind of can flow together. And it's a weird thing to say, but look, if you look at writers, they always do that throughout your darlings, throughout those characters or those scenes that are your favorite things. And anyway, that's one of the things is not to get focused on a scene, but always think of the thing as a whole thing. And this is part of my methodology of laying out rides. It's always, we develop scenes and then we sew them together, but I sew them together every day at the very beginning. I never develop scene, and then sew them together 3 months later. I'm sewing together the very first day, because connecting the scenes is the most important thing, not the scene itself. So you can't look at scenes. You got to look at the whole thing all the time and be ready to throw out your favorite part.
Really interesting advice. I've never heard anybody say that before. It makes a lot of sense. It reminds me of the old Coco Chanel axiom of when you look yourself in the mirror, take off the first thing that catches your eye.
Wow, interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is more of a it's kind of superficial like that, but it's almost it's a weird thing to say because it's just something that you find yourself when you're struggling through because it takes months and months and months of development and radius changing and go from this scene to that scene and move that scene over here and put it here and change the order of the scenes and stuff. And the best rides I've worked on, you go there and you don't say, oh, that was Chris's scene and that was Judy's scene and that was Phil's scene. That it's like nobody, by the time we're done, nobody can remember where they came from because they're all just everybody together making those scenes work. And yeah, you've solved these problems here and there, but if you got people saying, well, that was my scene, I think right now is a big red flag to me that you got a problem ride.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned, back when we were talking about Rise a few minutes ago, like all the different elements, the outdoor elements, and the outdoor unload and all that. Like, what do you think are the key aspects to successfully blending multiple experiences within one experience? A walkthrough, the ride vehicle, and what is it? There's the attraction at Trans Studio. That where you get out of the ride vehicle and do a walkthrough and then get back into it. How does that work?
Well, I would say that Trans, that's awesome. Those guys, Legacy, are excellent. And that's about people that are clever in terms of saying, hey, we're not going to bring the Disney Universal stuff to Malaysia or Indonesia. We're going to say how to work with that. And you know what? You can do that there. You probably can't do that here on a Disney or Universal thing. And it'd be a different way if you did it. It'd be a different configuration. Obviously, our capacity is much higher. So there's a lot more issues when you have a higher capacity. But I would say if you look at something like a Rise, if what we tried to do is, think about all the scenes, okay, yeah, I want to have some amazing, I want to go to the bridge. I've got to get to, so what's the interesting things on board one of these ships when we go on and what do I have to go through? And what are the stuff that you want to, and all these things on the list. So all these scenes are on a list and then they're all in different orders. Maybe we end up on the bridge and then go to the escape pod from there. Let's have the bridge in two places. Let's start at the bridge and end up in the bridge. Let's move, they have AT-ATs. Let's make a room where we go into AT-ATs. Let's have that. Where's that in the sequence of scenes? And part of it is when you're building the show up, you have your whole library of scenes that you want and how to move through them and what you're going to do. And then you reorganize them so and you look at there's for every scene in Rise of Resistance, there's probably 10 scenes that didn't make it. And and we could have gone funnier. We could have gone through the, through a garbage disposal thing, the crushed garbage thing. We could have done droid surge, the droid torture rooms and stuff. All those things we just cut out and we made a sequence. And if you think, you said it before, it's like Rise, it's an escalation, a constant escalation. Everything is there's a series of reveals that is like, holy crap. Mm-hmm. Then you drive through that reveal and then bunch of scenery, then you get another big reveal. That's like, holy crap. And then over and over again, that ride just escalates. So, seeing Rey pop up is awesome, right? But then the doors open. That's even more awesome. And then you get on that ship and then those doors open in that hangar bay. That's even more awesome. And then you make your way to the detention room and then that's awesome. And then you make your way to the AT-AT room and that's cool. Then you go up these, everything is one cool thing after another, an escalation. And so that's on purpose. And all those scenes got reorganized so that we could sequence the escalation of it. Just gets better and better as you go through it. And then, then you have to sequence big space, small space, tall space, wide space, big space, small. You can't just go big space, small space, small space. You have to kind of have a rhythm, a spatial rhythm as you're working through it.
Yeah, talk about saying, "Oh my God!" When in Rise, when you pull up to the big gun room, with the big projection on the right and the guns, my first ride on it, I was so lucky to have him working correctly. I literally exclaimed, oh my God, when we pulled into it, because you pull up and you think like, oh, we're going to back out of this. And then you just go straight through and the guns, get out of the way. And there's that tension of like, oh, is it going to come back? But it's not. But like these big, huge moving set pieces with the projection and like, and then just like, you just go for it, was just so incredible. It was one of my favorite parts of that whole attraction.
And
such a wow moment.
Question for you.
One of the keys is, and this just goes in general, when you think about a ride vehicle, if you want to have big moving pieces, they've got to be in scale to the ride vehicle, meaning whatever vehicle you're in, the thing that's impactful has got to have a scale to it that's bigger than the ride vehicle, because you always you're perceiving it as a person, an individual, but you're sensing the vehicle around you, and so the gun's got to be way bigger than the vehicle. It's got to be that big, and it's kind of why it's hard to pull off things on the tram tour at Universal, because the tram is so big, and you got a sense of how big it is that you look at miniatures, it's not really impressive. Which is why that plane is so cool, because that plane is the thing that's bigger than the tram. It's the one thing that's bigger than the tram, and so anyway, that's part of it too. Make sure you're think about the context. Your vehicle has a presence, and you want the things around it to be bigger than that vehicle or more presence in that vehicle.
One more rise thought, just because we're on the topic.
All right.
Just many people have gone into great lengths to kind of hide an elevator and an attraction, but this ride embraced it and made it part of the experience, and quite a compelling one. Any thought on that and how they were able to pull that off? Multiple ride system switching.
Oh, it's insane. I mean, if you think about the timing, that's so precise. I mean, if you sit there and you look at that thing, that elevator comes down and you drive right on it, and then it goes right up, and then you get off and it comes back down. The other car, it's so precise in terms of the timing to pull that off. And part of a two-story attraction like that is the fact is, if you actually went into a real elevator and you were in a box, it'd be one of the most boring 15 20 seconds of the ride in this little box. Now, we do go into a fake elevator later that we put you in a box, but we can craft that better because it's a fake elevator. We don't really have to wait for it to move and all that stuff. We can time that for everything else, for the real show timing, and not be depending on the elevator timing. So the fact that's another thing we got away with. They let us have these exposed elevators, and that you can drive into that awesome scene, that big two-story. I mean, that's the other thing too. It's like we got these big AT-ATs. What if you saw them from the ground and from above? I mean, that's actually part of it. I mean, you might start at the show saying, "Look, I'm going to drive in and see them on the ground floor." Then later on, I'm going to see them from up above, and then that gets morphed into, heck, why don't I just go up in that scene and then take care of it that way? So it's all about taking opportunities of what's in front of you.
Yeah, so it's incredible. Now, we're moving on to a little bit more about, we talked about the team and how many collaborators go into this. And I think the best projects have a lot of collaboration. Question is, what elements of collaboration do you aim for with a creative team to balance the many disciplines and visions involved?
Well, I mean, as I was getting into the part of really beginning to lay out rides and do rides and stuff, it's just develop a methodology of collaboration, and it's part of there's a process. It's probably kind of hard to describe, but there's a process of making sure everybody's got input, maybe sure everybody's got assignments, and then if it works right, we might have a meeting with 3 people, 4 people at the beginning of the day, and then we work all afternoon on separate things, and then we bring them back together in the morning again and meet for a couple hours in the morning, then go in the afternoon. So every day we're collaborating and getting stuff done, and everybody's got homework and they go away and do it. And it might be something like, you know what, you wrote this script, but you really you don't have 12 seconds, you got 8 seconds to say it. So write a line that you can say in 5 or 6 seconds. So we have that thing. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to turn the car around here and go this way. And then you get challenged by the creative director to say, look, I want to come in from the other side and do some other stuff. So it's just a matter of trying to make it work. And then I mean, part of it, if my responsibility is to make it work and the creative director's responsibility to make it cool, well, I can take the burden of making it cool off my shoulders. And he's going to take the responsibility of making it work off his shoulders, so we can both do our functional stuff, and then we overlap. And I would say this too, on modern rides, our saying is the creative people got to be technical and the technical people got to be creative. You got to have a creative director that has some technical ability. They can't just say, hey, I want this thing to hang out there and float in space. And you can't have the technical people say, well, it's just on the blueprint. This is how this machine works, and this is how much room it takes. You got to have people that can all work together, and that's everybody from the creative side to the engineering side. They got to overlap their skill sets and their roles, but they have to take a responsibility for their lane, but they can't stay in their lane. They have to kind of branch out and make sure that if the creative director has something, you have a creative engineering solution for that, or a creative ride solution for that. And that's, I don't know if that explains it, but that's part of how we do it.
Okay.
I think that's excellent advice. The creative people need to be technical and the technical people need to be creative. I think that's one of the key elements to a successful themed entertainment project.
Yeah, especially a modern one. I mean, back in the day when, you just sent boats through scenes, maybe they could be separate. That show doesn't really work in today's world right now.
Yeah, and then they can hate each other, no problem.
Yeah. Your car can open a door by running into it. I don't think we really do that anymore.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, the next question, what do you look for in a guest reception or response to determine attraction storytelling has been successful?
Well, honestly, you hear a lot of people in our business say, oh my God, I love to do this because I get to go and watch the kids have fun. And it's like, oh my God, these kids love this ride. It's like, I honestly don't care about that too much. It's like, it's like we design rides and we don't ask them what they want. It's like Tarantino says he makes movies for himself and you're allowed to watch if you want to, but he's making his own movies,
Right.
And if you focus on what the guests want, it's Steve Jobs didn't ask you if you want an iPhone or not. He just gave you one, right?
Right.
And could we ask if you want Rise of Resistance, or we just make you one? I mean, I think I do focus on what I want guests to feel when they get off the ride. What do you want somebody to feel? And it's almost always the same. So I want them to feel like, holy crap, that was unbelievable. I can't believe they took me there. Mm-hmm. And I think it's like this. There's an IP. You can experience IPs lots of ways. Like you can read a book. You can, like Harry Potter, you can read a book. You can watch a movie. You could play a video game. You could play, computer games. You could play board games. But if you want to be there, go to a theme park. That's where you can really be there. And you've got to take advantage of what you can do. And you know what? You may not have to play a game, because that's experiencing the IP from the game point of view. You can experience the IP from just being there. And that's really focusing on what you can bring with this theme park attraction versus what you would get on a story. I mean, I can't tell the details of a story that they get in the book, and they don't transfer to the movies. They don't transfer to the theme park. I mean, I got 4 minutes to experience Harry Potter, and we want you to get the whole sense of that experience in that 4 minutes. And we want to bring it all to you and just dump it on you and make you live in that world for a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's why theme parks will endure, is because there truly is no substitute for actually being there.
It's interesting because, I mean, people are still stuck. I mean, designers are still stuck on screen. But I mean, let's face it, your day all day long is computers, iPads, phones, TV on the backseat of your mom's car. I mean, everything. It's screens everywhere. It's streaming stuff. It's everything. And theme parks, if we can actually take you there and not take you there and have you watch a movie there, it might be. That's what I would shoot for.
Actually, I put on the notes, I have a bonus question, and that was, you started to dance around a little bit, and I was just having a philosophical discussion in my head about screens versus not screens. And, to me, you mentioned with Harry Potter, you kind of had to get the characters there. You had to get the live actors there, to pay off on that. And, if we look at animatronic attractions, like Pirates of the Caribbean, they're pretty limited so far about how they can capture the essence of whether it's an IP where it's a swashbuckling adventure like Johnny Depp's Pirates of the Caribbean. And you want to be able to pay off on the epicness. So what is that balance when you're going through and you're having a say of like, this should be a screen, this should not? And by the way, Rise of the Resistance, I think, is the best execution of media of any attraction I've ever been on. So applaud for that, the whole team for that. But what is the recommendation you have on that and integrating it?
Well, I mean, you could look at, I didn't work on Pirates Shanghai, but you could look at that as of how they answered that question of saying, we're not going to make Pirates Anaheim, we're going to make Pirates Shanghai, which is when you blend the media into the scenery. I actually think that's the way Rise did it, where we don't have any screens. I mean, I guess when you're flying back on the escape pod, you're immersed into a screen, but you're still within a ship seeing that exterior thing. Where on the bridge you're looking out, you're looking out of space windows from within a set. That actually works for that property. For other properties, it didn't work. I mean, look at the blending of Pirates Shanghai. That was a brilliant use of big, huge sets, extended movie screens, and big immersive stuff. I mean, I don't know. I think that to me, it's got to start with, I want to physically be there. And if I can stretch the set with a piece of media, I think that's pretty cool. And every now and then have an immersive piece where you're not even stretching a set, you're just flying someplace. But I think the best use of media is going to be extending sets or enhancing sets.
Yeah. Great. Andy, over to you in the studio.
Well, to try to wrap this up, what attractions do you consider to be sort of like the major turning points in immersive storytelling over the years?
Well, I'll point to something like Star Trek Experience in Vegas. Did you guys ever get to see that thing?
Oh yeah, it's one of my favorites. Like, there's only like 2 or 3 attractions that I've been on where I fully suspended disbelief, and that was one of them.
Yeah, it was one of the greatest effects in the history of our industry, and people have tried to recreate that transformer effect, the transporter room effect. I mean, they try to do it in Poseidon's Fury, they try to do it in this Guardians coaster, and nobody's been able to do it the way those guys did on that thing. And I think one of the things about that is, if you start out with a magic trick that is so amazing that you as a guest, you'll go with wherever they want to go. I mean, you said Star Trek I mean, let's face it. Once you did the transporter, you go to the bridge. The bridge is just some stickers on a stupid wooden bridge thing, but you didn't care because you were already in. That transporter room got you in. Yeah. And I think that's part of the thing, is to give you a magic trick up front to really take you from here to there. And I think that, like on Rise, Ray, there's more spectacular things in the Ray experience, but the Ray as a start off thing and then open the doors of that thing, it's not the same as the Vegas thing, but it has that magic thing that says, okay, I'm with these guys, I'm going with them. And then the fact that we escalate it each time, we don't just sit down and give you stickers on plywood after that. We just keep escalating it. So I would say that Vegas thing was a big changer. People say Rise was a game changer, but it really wasn't. If the game was here, Rise is way up here, and it's going to stay way up here. The game's still going to go on because Rise just got so many things that fell into place, so much money, so much just political support internally and stuff like that. We got away with stuff that it'll be very difficult to get away with anymore. And so you just got to like that for it's a standalone above the game didn't change. The game's still going on much lower than Rise, though.
It's funny. When I came off of Rise the first time, obviously I was just overwhelmed. But one of the thoughts that I had coming off of Rise was there was so much, and it was that constant escalation you mentioned. Is like one of my first thoughts was, man, if that's what we got, what did they cut? Yeah. I
mean, we could talk about what they cut, but it's awesome what we got. I mean, I could
Yeah.
just we got a freaking movie studio hangar. I mean, a sound stage that we just
Yeah.
walked through one edge of.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got to unload outside. You know, we got to walk from the pre-show outside to the show. It just can't get over what we did get. And
Yeah.
a lot of that was honestly, you know what it was our creative director, again, John Lorena, brilliant, just a maestro in every way. But he tasked us with, we're going to be on budget every single day. And if we're ever over budget, we're just going to keep cutting until we make budget. And if we cut the budget before somebody else has to, then we get to keep what we want.
Right.
And part of that was that building. It looks like a big building, but it is tight. I mean, the 3D modeling that we had, the BIM stuff that we did. I mean, every conduit, they're all just snake. Everything is just wound in. The exit cord, everything is. That's a tight building that was amazing. Internal architects on that team, amazing BIM management on that team, amazing. You know, creative was able to say, yes, I see what you're trying to do. I'll sacrifice that to get this corner to put this thing in there, and that was. So what we got was a testimony to how hard we fought to keep the cost under control and not let anybody in any phase. If the audio guy wants to go over budget, forget it. You can't. You got to stay in there.
Yeah.
Architects don't add a square foot to this building, no matter what you do. We'll squeeze it in. If you need something, we'll squeeze it in. We'll take show out of it. And that's what we got. We got.
And I have a quick question before we ask our last question. Did you know how cool the thing you were building, or were you too close to it along the way?
We knew it was killer. It's you know, I probably had 2 or 3 or more once in a lifetime attractions, and when they're coming together, it's magical. And you know, the pieces come together, and you know, a lot of things you don't get to see them together. You're doing a mock-up to make this door work and this thing work and this thing work and this thing work. Sometimes you don't get to see them all working together until you're in this field. But if you can imagine how they work together and you can solve problems before they're all in the same room and they're all together, we knew we had something. All of us did. We all knew that it was unbelievable, and it was just unbelievable that we got to actually do it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was my. Sorry. Go ahead, Eddie.
The other sense that I got was getting off of that thing was like it was immediately evident that like you couldn't have designed and built and integrated all that stuff like literally a second in time before you actually did. Like you couldn't have done that ride like 2 years earlier. Like I feel like the technology wouldn't have gotten you there.
That's probably true. I will say this though, it's Rise was like it was a bunch of simple effects, a bunch. I mean, it's too many. And if you look at something like Flight of Passage, that's one humongous machine, really complicated, crazy machine, complicated to get people organized, to get to their levels, to get to their seats, and then complicated machine, big screens, it's a big, huge one big thing. Rise is the opposite. Rise is 50 really simple things. But 50 simple things is way more complicated than one big thing. And that might be something that we learned along the way, that, it's just a show door. Hey, it's just a ride door. There's a million of them, you know? Yeah, but there's 40 of them. So it's one of them screws up and your show's down. And so I wouldn't say that we did anything super advanced. We just put a lot of simple stuff together.
Yeah. Well, and I'll just say this. I know this wasn't our intent to talk about Rise, but hard not to, right? It's such an incredible experience. What are some new and recent approaches to themed attractions that you have that you're excited about for the future of the industry? So we've kind of I guess Rise was a few years ago. What do you think are the tools, just to kind of talk more, that young designers, creative directors should be looking at?
It's weird because I'm an old guy and I'm not the demographic. And so when I say stuff like, I want to do rides with less screens, I mean, we talked about it before. I just think there's everything, phones, maps, computers, tablet, everything is screens. And I think that the reason people go to theme parks is to get away from screens for a while. And I want I don't want you to go in the park and have you. This is one of the problems with this Disney thing. It's like you look at your phone all day long trying to figure out where you're supposed to be, and it's like, ideally, you put your phone in your pocket, you don't even take it out all day. Maybe take pictures or something. But and look, I don't know if the trend is going there, but I'm just trying to think of why you would still keep going to theme parks and why they're still relevant. And I think it's got to go back to analog stuff and tactile things and physical stuff, which may sound weird, and it may just be. And I'm totally aware that I'm not in the current demographic of this stuff, and maybe there's a bridge between the analog, physical, tactile world and the media stuff.
And one of the things I was so surprised and delighted with the Secret Life of Pets ride was just the sheer number of animatronics and live figures and scenic and everything like that was just really, really breath of fresh air.
Yeah, totally. And then they did use a lot of projection mapping to extend this. I mean, just to kind of build enhance their effects and layer them. And but they got a lot of figures, and especially what they did in the queue line by just putting those figures just right there. It's so cute. It's so I mean, you look at that and go, wow, this is the whole thing. Disney, Universal, they got different thinking, and I work for both of them, so I got to kind of go back and forth on either side of the fence. But the pilot in the spaceship in Rides is all in a big cage. He's right there, but he's in a big cage. Universal can put those dogs, like, they're just right there. They're so cute. They're just right there, and they're in the kitchen getting his butt scratched, and the one just lounging on the stuff. It's really that there's a lot of magic in that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that magic queue line really helped sell the rest of the show.
Yeah.
Well, I will just say this has been amazing. This has been one of my favorite interviews. It's been great just talking real specific shop about design and dark rides, which are, I think the quintessential theme park experience. We'd love to have you back in the future. If you're willing, maybe we can talk about it, more refine in, because there's just that.
Well, sure, it seems fun. I'll see what the fallout is, and then we'll see if it makes sense.
We'll see what the fallout is. Really appreciate it. Phil, if you don't mind, just stay on for after we finish, and we'll just do a little debrief for about 2 minutes in the green room, if that's okay with you. Andy, any other closing thoughts, or Phil, any other goodbyes you'd like to say to your fans, all your adoring fans?
No. I got nothing else.
Well, thank you so much, Phil. It was like Patrick said, it was just incredible. We really appreciate your time and your insight to all of this. And you may not realize it, but you are a hero of many in the industry. And I think that there's a lot of people that are going to really enjoy this conversation. So thank you again so much.
All right, guys. Thanks a bunch.